The Academic Staff Union of Universities has given the federal government of Nigeria a 2-month ultimatum to implement all its demand, or else it will use all legitimate means, including invoking the no work, no pay to enforce compliance. Speaking on Tuesday during a press conference held by the Lagos State Zone of the ASUU, that's at the University of Lagos Zonal Coordinator, Adelaja Odukoya actually said this, and that Nigeria was on the verge of collapse. Well, this isn't the first time that we are actually, or Nigerians will be witnessing ASUU, not just, given ultimatum, but also going on strike. We know that during the last administration, they were on months of strike, and the current administration was able to actually settle some arrears. Recently, the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did make some pivotal appointments within the educational sector, which of course has caused quite a number of reactions within that space also. But it looks like for many Nigerian students who are in the public tertiary institutions, it might not just be Uhuru anytime soon, because if this agreement reached as far back as 2009, is not implemented to the latter, we might have a situation whereby these schools might go on strike again. We know that of course, since this new administration came on board, it's introduced some novel ideas or initiatives within the education space. One of it is the student loan. And so the big question is, what becomes of the student loan when, of course, schools are on strike? I mean, these, of course, are one of the many questions to be answered and addressed once we come back from this break. Welcome back. Of course, this is still the conversation on News Central Television. Well, to discuss the issue of the looming ASUU strike, I am joined in the studio right now by the head of News Central's research, Abdulateef Ahmed. Abdulateef, thank you for joining me on the news.
Thank you for having me.
On the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start off with something here. A statement by one of the key officers of ASUU at the recent meeting that was held. And part of what he said is that at the last NEC meeting on May 11th and 12th, held at the Obafemi Awolowo University, we decided to give the government just 2 months to implement all the demands, or else we would go on strike. But right now we are seeing a union rescinding on their words to say, you know what, it looks like we are going to, of course, down tools again. Let's not forget what happened during the time of the last administration, talking about Muhammadu Buhari. What do you make of this notice by ASUU?
Well, it is not surprising that ASUU will take this stand. Already ASUU has a signature that we are getting used to. Work for a few months and then down tools for a few more months, negotiate, go back to the classes, and then resume the campaign for wage increment and other sundry matters. Because most times when you talk about ASUU would say that it is not all about wages, but we know that is central to all the demands. However, one of the things that we must understand is, why is ASUU joining NLC to down tools at this moment? Because again, ASUU is a strong component of NLC. So it could be a solidarity, or it could be because they have not seen sincerity on the part of government in meeting up with the demands that it had put forward earlier before now.
Let's look at some of the demands or unfulfilled demands according to ASUU. Now, of course, this dates back to 2009, where ASUU renegotiated the federal government stroke ASUU 2009 agreement. Part of what was agreed on in that particular draft, it has the non-release of withheld salaries and arrears of earned academic allowances, inadequate funding of universities, proliferation of universities, deceitful integrated personnel and payroll information system. I mean, we know that the IPPIS is another issue on its own, but let's pick it by piecemeal. Let's start with payment of arrears. We know this current administration made some efforts in that regard, but I mean, should that also not show some level of concern and commitment, particularly from the government to ASUU, for them to say, you know what, it looks like maybe to a large extent this administration might just mean well?
Well, meaning well is not lip service. Beyond negotiations and agreements, you should be seen to be fulfilling, the agreements. And I mean, if ASUU had seen that government had done the needful, I doubt if ASUU will actually decide to go on strike at this moment. So what I think is ASUU is looking at the body language of the government. It has not seen the necessary commitment on the part of government, and that is why it is deciding to, down tools. When you talk about payments withheld for the days of non-teaching, non-academic work, well, the sad or the unfortunate thing about academics is that whatever number of months you have missed as academics, you must teach the courses, you must teach, lecture for those months that you missed before you can proceed. You cannot build anything on nothing. I mean, after missing 9 months or 10 months of academic work, you cannot just continue from, where you expect students to pick up from. That doesn't work that way. However, even if you have to teach 9 months worth of work in a matter of 2 weeks or 1 month, you'll be, putting too much burden on the minds and heart and brain of, students.
Sorry to cut in here, Abdul Latif. Let's even backtrack a bit. Many have even questioned, I mean, it's good to demand your wage, it's good to demand an improvement, in conditions of work and all of that. But many are also questioning the quality of education, in the country, particularly at the tertiary level. Let's start with the syllabus, for instance. Is it in tandem with the world of today? I mean, so many will tell you that they are doing courses they don't even understand. They don't know what they want to even use it for when they come out of school. It's just to get a degree once you're out of school, and then you find your, your foot along the way. Many are opting for certifications that they do in 2 months, and, they end well. So let's backtrack a bit. Does ASUU itself, has it done its own work to see how it can be better in terms of the quality, of education through the syllabus, through the courses of study, through personal development? Some students will even tell you that some of the things they are being taught, the syllabus is as old as, when many of those lecturers were in school. So yeah. I would like to know your take on this, because as much as you are saying, yes, the government has to play its part, which we totally get, does ASUU not also have a role to play in all of this too, as an association? It
actually does. You see, the interesting thing about education is that when you see genuine scholarship, the genuine scholarship attracts research, it attracts funding, it attracts goodwill, it attracts patronage. The parts of the world where people go to seek for the best education, it is seen that education in those places actually impacts on the society, solves the problems of the society. What we see about the African mind or the black man's mind is that sometimes they create problems around solutions. So we have an ASUU, or we have an academic space where the academics are seen as part of the problem. People who frustrate students, and ensure they do not graduate as at when they should. If you've had foreign education, you will realize that a lot of things that are taught, in Nigeria at the moment are outmoded. There are things that should, have been left behind, and then, improve the, curriculum. Again, if you look at the fact that in the entire body of work, internationally, globally, what percentage does the academics in Nigeria, occupy? Because again, you cannot use obsolete curriculum or syllabuses to teach students and then expect that, you'll be reckoned with across the world. So you have on that side, ASUU, or the academia in Nigeria, not being able to implement, the most latest developments in education, basically because good education is expensive. ASUU cannot work in isolation. You don't expect them to develop, the best, and most up-to-date syllabuses that will operate in the air. It will operate needing devices, needing modern technologies and all of that. And therefore, you actually need to fund education in order for the mind, to think properly, coherently, to be able to develop proper syllabuses.
I understand the aspect of
correctly.
funding, Abdullah Tiff. I totally do, right? And of course, I concur with you. But it still goes back to something. Maybe the aspect of personal development, particularly on many of the lecturers or tutors. The pandemic happened, right? And I felt that period should have been a period where our academia or Nigeria's academic system, particularly at the tertiary level, should have sort of, shown its brightest, because we saw universities across the world, like the Harvards of this world, the Oxford, trying to profess solution to a global problem. But it looked like that period, ASUU was actually on strike, and the entire, academia was silent.
Yeah, absolutely.
The rest of the world went to work. Mm-hmm. Ours was at home.
Yeah, because
I really understand, their protest and the reasons for their protest. But then I think another fundamental question is, are they truly also doing some sort of inward review to ensure that they themselves, their members, are up to date? UK makes a whole lot of money from education. There's a research that has it that immigrants, Africans and Indians, make a bulk of people that bring in inflow in terms of the educational sector in the UK. Why can Nigeria not be like that? Aside just the usual excuse of, you need money to make money and all of that. What do you also feel is a core problem?
Our problem still goes back to this money that we're trying not to talk about. See, you must fund properly. There's a global standard for funding education. You cannot fund the lifestyle of politicians and, with billions, and then you leave academics starving. It doesn't rest just solely on the academia. It has to be a national issue. Look at India, for example. It is intentional all through the levels of governance that they want to inculcate, certain specialized education, amongst people. And then you will see the way Indians are attracting a lot of, forex, because they are smart in terms of what they have been inculcated with. Now, the same thing is possible in Nigeria, but you cannot give substandard education and expect people to attract forex without substandard education. In fact, if you see Nigerians who are attracting forex, most times they are self-taught. There are people who have taken their time to leave whatever it is they've been taught in the universities and say, you know what, this is what the world is demanding. This is what the world needs right now. I need to learn, understand, and proffer solutions. So the world will come after you if you have solutions, to global problems. ASUU will do its own part, but the government must fund education in such a way that ASUU will no longer have excuses. Again, there was a time that, universities, were said to have autonomy and all of that. I'm still wondering, why are our universities unable to generate, money?
I was about to ask you the same question
on their own.
Because there was a time, I'm sorry, I was having, a conversation with a top, dean, sorry, of one of the schools in Nigeria. And he told me that the amount of monies some of this public universities, tertiary institutions make and don't declare is mind-blowing.
Absolutely.
So who holds them accountable?
That's the other problem. You see, a lot of universities, public universities, do not want accountability. And it's not just universities. Across the strata, everywhere you go to, people want to be able to run away from accountability. But the question is, if you are not accountable, you are instilling a certain mindset, amongst the undergrads that will graduate and then become members of the society, members of the civil force, who will also not want to be accountable. And so we go back through the same circle. You have miseducation of the Nigerian mindset, and then people are pushed into the labor market, and because they know that they came out of a system that is not accountable, they end up in a system where they also do not want to be accountable. So you keep asking public servants, let's know the truth about this thing. Let's, can you be transparent for a moment? They are unable to be transparent because they have been grafted with, that process where not being transparent is seen as the norm. And that is what our universities lately stand for. They charge a lot of money, they misappropriate a lot of funds, and they hide it from public knowledge. Let the universities begin to publish, their spendings, and then people begin to take a closer look and say, you know what, for real, our universities are being starved. Our universities need better funding. But they close their books. They don't want it to be opened. They don't want any form of transparency. And it's probably part of the reason why you have the, all the brouhaha around IPPIS. Let's see it. The government wants to see it.
IPPIS also has come to the fore.
Okay.
It's part of the reasons why there's been a lot of back and forth on this one. Some lecturers, it was during that period they were able to find out issues of ghost workers and lecturers who, of course, were working behind the scenes and, being all shady. But my next question would be on the issue of the student loan, an initiative brought, into implementation by this current administration. Now we are seeing ASUU going on strike. And then a student is out there. Should this student loan initiative, hit the ground running in full force? A student is already owing the government a certain amount. ASUU is on strike. He's not sure whether when he comes out of university, he would get a job, or a job is standing by. Where does this place the average Nigerian student who maybe is looking up to the student loan to foot his fees?
Well, the idea of the student loan is a fantastic one, especially if you understand that, well, not all hands are equal. There are people who are smart but are unable to access funds for them to acquire the best of education. So the student loans, depending on how it is designed, can be attached to, smart, indigent, students who, well, they show a lot of promise. However, they do not have any means of, funding their, scholarship or their education, as the case may be. And then if the fact that you are investing, you are loaning money in code, you are loaning money to smart students, there's a chance that smart students will excel academically and then hopefully be gainfully employed. If that happens, it means that repayment can be guaranteed, And again, universities that create, that have quality education should be able to create jobs in themselves, and therefore repayment of such loans should not be really difficult. So it's not a problem, fund ASUU or fund the academics so that they can do a lot of research, development, a lot of scientific exploration and all of that, and then also fund students who are willing to put in their all for the purpose of learning and giving back to the society, because that's what forward-thinking societies do.
Abdul-Lateef, before I let you go, I just feel I should say this because, for one, I'm really passionate about education. The fact being that my mother, she wasn't a lecturer; she was a teacher, in secondary. So I grew up around, the academia and all of that. I really feel that ASUU should look beyond, and this, I would like your reaction on this, should look beyond funding from the government. The reason is this: if the strike issue remains persistent, I was a victim at master's level, right? We went home for, I think, close to 10 months. By the time people came back, those that were not pregnant were pregnant, those that were single were married, those that didn't have job had jobs. Some of us had gray hair. People could not remember their matric numbers. It was chaotic. Now, having to experience that multiple times, a 4-year course becomes 6 years because you're trying to push, a narrative, a course, and all of that. What I see happening, and I'd like your opinion on this, Lateef, is people might start, and I'm also including organizations, might start circumventing universities and encouraging potential candidates to take up courses, because we are beginning to see a situation right now where you do a 3-month course, a 4-month course, a 6-month course. You're a professional and you earn well, way better than a graduate, or your 4-year course. And then you ask yourself, why did I even spend 4 years in the university in the first place? Are we not seeing a situation whereby maybe in 5 years, our university system would become irrelevant?
You know what happened to the banks lately? That you have fintechs coming up and providing solutions to Nigeria's problems, financial problems, where people begin to avoid the banks and, patronize apps that you do not need to interface physically with, the bankers in order to be able to run your transactions. Smart thinking. That is what happened to our educational system. It's not about the buildings. It's not about lecturers who have grown gray hair and, screaming down their ideas at you, as the case may be. It will be that someone somewhere is providing solution. The education you need for which you want to acquire in 5 years can be acquired in 3 years, as seen in other parts of the world. Therefore, someone will come somewhere and say, you know what? Time is money. We do not have 5 years to waste. We have 3 years to offer you the same quality education, even if it's a little more expensive than the universities we have now. People will go acquire this education and be available for the labor market. You see, so one thing is, acquiring education is not just all about getting jobs, but solving problems. And so if you can solve my problem and you have not acquired university education, do I really care? No. Give me solutions to my problem. It doesn't have to be what degrees, what you write, what first class, second class. It's immaterial. The problems of the world are not solved with certificates. They are solved with smart thinking. And that is the direction the world will be going to. So if ASUU refuse to learn, if they continue in this, wasting people's time, making people waste 6 months, 10 months, and refusing to understand the value of time to every individual's life, then at some point, there will be a departure from patronage of our public institutions. People will patronize alternative forms of education, get smart, get money, get funded, and probably get hired by the best hands in the world because, again, the space has been democratized. If you get if you get the quality education that you need in this part of the world, you can be hired from any part of the world. Just log on your system. You're communicating your ideas, your smartness, your ingenuity, and all of that. And people say, you know what? That guy sounds like somebody I need. Come over. They will pay for your flights and pay for your accommodation and have you work anywhere in the world. So ASUU cannot continue to hold the government by the balls or hold the government by the neck. ASUU has to re-strategize, look for alternative ways of expressing its discontent against a government that has already continued to show disdain for funding education.
And of course, I totally agree with you. Just in line with what you said, I know that the richest man in the world, I don't know if he still holds that rank, talking about Elon Musk, said any day, anytime, would rather take competence over qualification. So,
absolutely.
Many of them, actually. I mean, it just goes to show that the world is evolving and people need to move with it. It's also not to say that the government shouldn't play its part. We know that education is important. I mean, if you look at Nigeria's budget in itself, the amount of monies that is usually allocated to education is always almost insignificant. It's
mind-boggling.
It's very minute, right? I mean, there was a report. It's not even a report. It's on the news. One pilgrimage, I don't want to mention it, 90 billion. And then education is there. So it just tells you where the priority is, right? So I feel that a lot needs to be done, particularly on the part of the government, but even more importantly on the part of ASUU to get creative, just like what you said, Lateef. Lateef, thank you so much for being on the conversation with me at this time.
Thank you for having me.
Deeply appreciate you and, of course, your wealth of knowledge.
Thank you.